basically the same time. And
Uh-huh.
every time I'm in a hotel and I'll say, well, give me a wake-up call, I am up so far before the wake-up call. It's like I have this automatic, start button inside me. But it's interesting because there are other people who set the alarm. I know a lot of people use their phone now as an alarm, and then they keep pressing the button, and it keeps going
Snooze.
off every 5 minutes, and they never really get up. And because I've had roommates like that, at conferences, and I'm thinking, why don't they get up? Why don't they get up? But I think one of the other things is what happens if you have, like with my husband, I knew that he was snoring all the time, and I was pretty sure he had sleep apnea, and we did have him tested, and he did. So you use the term secondhand sleep apnea. What is meant
Yeah.
by that?
Yeah, so that's my little joke and correlating it with secondhand smoke. So we all know that secondhand smoke is bad. I mean, there have been laws now everywhere that people don't smoke inside anymore and things like that because we realized that being around smoking was almost as bad as smoking. There was a really neat study done in 1999 at Mayo Clinic where they took couples and tested them. The husband was assumed to have sleep apnea in each case, and the wife was not, and they wired them all both up, put them in a big bed, and tested them both simultaneously. And what they found in that study was that the men indeed did have sleep apnea, but their bed partners, their spouses, and these were people that had been married for a long time. These weren't newlyweds. They'd been married a long time, and even though the spouse had been habituated to the noise, the sleep apnea was actually messing up the wife's sleep. And when they put the guy on CPAP, their sleep immediately improved that night, right then, immediately, which just blows my mind. Again, these were people that had been sleeping together for a decade plus. And immediately, as soon as they put that guy on CPAP, the spouse's sleep got better. So we don't know this yet, but I suspect that secondhand sleep apnea is a real serious problem, and that you could have a woman that's doing everything right. They're eating right, they're exercising, they're doing everything, but that their spouses, their bed partners' sleep is really screwing them up, and not just a ha ha, my husband snores kind of screw up, but at a biological, physiological level, it's causing harm.
It's interesting because my husband always snored, and I never really paid attention to it because I was out like a light. But when I was going through chemo, it really bothered me. And so I, for the first time in our marriage, uh, sent him into the other room. I said, "Look, I need my rest. I need to get
Yes.
through this chemo." And I did well. I mean, I never got sick. I was very fortunate. But I said, "You're going to go sleep in the other room," and he did, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was really wonderful for the whole time I was going through chemo, and I
Yeah.
literally had to send him in the other room because it never bothered me except when I was going through chemo.
And the thing that I think we don't know, Gail, is did it bother you or not? So I think it's, again, it's kind of like the secondhand smoke thing. We thought it didn't bother us, and then like my mother. My mother worked in an office back in the olden days where people smoked like chimneys, and when she had an X-ray down when she was actually going through cancer herself, they asked her how long she'd smoked. Well, my mother never smoked a cigarette in her entire life, but on her lungs was evidence of smoking. My mother slept next to my father, who is a heroic snorer, as they say, and terrible sleep apnea. And I just wonder, what kind of effect does that have, screwing up your sleep basically your whole life? So again, we don't have science behind that, but my belief is, if you're somebody and your bed partner is snoring like that, you should take it seriously. Not just for them, because you want them to be healthy too, but
Yeah.
for you too.
Well, you brought up the lung cancer, and one of the statistics I've been reading lately, as a matter of fact, I was reading several articles on it last week, is that how many people are today coming down with lung cancer and they've never smoked. And
Yeah.
they haven't necessarily been around smokers either. They don't know what's causing it, but more and more people who are non-smokers are coming down with lung cancer today, and I'm not sure why, but that seems to be prevalent these days. So, what
Yeah,
other
sure.
sorts of problems are related to sleep apnea that we haven't talked
Well,
about?
yeah, my goodness. So there are many things that are correlated. Heart disease, Uh, all manner of heart disease. A quick thing on heart disease that is sort of shocking is the first indication that someone has heart disease in half of the people with heart disease. So there's about 610,000 deaths related to heart disease each year in the United States. Over 300,000 of those deaths is from something called sudden cardiac death, where they die. Just the first indication is they die. This is the person that goes to work and dies. No chest pain, no nothing. They just drop dead. And then they later find out, oh, well, this person probably had this, they probably had that. So that's a huge one, is heart disease. Things that are commonly misdiagnosed and they probably have an underlying sleep apnea as their cause, but they're misdiagnosed as other things. Gastroesophageal reflux or heartburn. That is common, especially in men. Some men will be diagnosed with prostate problems because they're getting up to go to the bathroom many times a night, but it's actually sleep apnea. In women, the very biggest, most common, and frankly most disturbing to me is depression. So if a thinner woman or a younger woman or an energetic woman like you goes into the doctor and says, Doc, I just don't have the energy like I used to. I just don't have that drive. I get emotional. And if you think about it, all of those could absolutely be descriptors of being tired. But instead of that, instead of the doctor saying, well, maybe we should get a sleep study, the doctor says, here's some Prozac. And that really bothers me because when people get put on certain medications, there's certain stigmas and things that go along with that. And it can almost become part of someone's identity. And then it gets really discouraging when they go on multiple medications and nothing gets better. But of course it doesn't get better because they're not actually treating the cause. So that's, kind of the take-home message is, I like to say, is all depression sleep apnea? Well, no, of course it's not. But before my wife goes on Prozac, she's getting a sleep study. Is all GERD sleep apnea? No, but before I start taking Prilosec, I'm getting a sleep study. Is all ADHD sleep apnea? No, but before my kid goes on Ritalin, he's getting a sleep study.
Very good ideas, absolutely. So how can people get a hold of you, Jamison?
My website is more for doctors right now, but I am adding more information for others. So Jamison Spencer, Jamison Spencer, JamisonSpencer.com is a good way. And on there's my cell phone number's on there, my email address. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. They can Google me, and always happy to take questions and help people. I live in North Carolina now. I have a practice out west in Idaho, but I know everybody who does this around the country.
Wow, that's very diverse. North Carolina and Idaho. You can't get more different than that, can you?
That's quite a commute, I know.
Oh dear. Well, you've been a real resource for us on this subject of sleep apnea, and I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this who are saying, "Wow, I never thought about this." And as you were talking about it, there were so many things that described my husband. He had prostate cancer, he had heart disease, which he finally succumbed to that. But he had heartburn all the time. Tums were always on the counter, and so there were a lot of issues. Some of them were not only caused by sleep apnea; it was his own daily habits that contributed to this
Sure.
as well. But it's very important. You've made some really really good points because especially with children, if anybody listening has children that demonstrate any of the things that Dr. Spencer has talked about, certainly. Check it out. Check it out. Don't just take it for granted. And before you go on any of these wild medications, make sure that you check sleep apnea first. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, if anybody is interested, you can just go to JamisonSpencer.com. And thanks so much for being with us.